Hi everyone and welcome back to another Monday guide. I guess most of you already figured it out by the title of this guide, but yes, it is true, we're back on the Navy theme. With that said, I will be doing quite a different format this time around in something I never really tried before, and that is that I will be doing some battle testing of the starting navies. More specifically, I will be running tests on the UK versus the US and versus Japan, or all of them three against each other, and to see which fleet is the strongest. After that, I will be adding some layers of complexity, namely doctrines, spirits, admirals, to see if we can, well, tilt the results in one way or another and see what that does with the lineups. And hopefully draw some conclusions on that. I had a lot of fun making this guide, so I hope you guys will have fun watching it as well. Let's get started. Alright, so how will I run my testing when I test the starting navies? First off, I will do all the testing in the South China Sea, as you can see on the screen right here. And that is because it's an ocean tile. And ocean tiles are neutral. They're like the plains of the ocean, so no clear advantage to any kind of fleet. So that's where I will be doing all the fighting. After that, we will have a look at the fleets. And these are the three fleets I will be testing and comparing to each other. We have the Japanese fleet, the US fleet, and the UK fleet. And it's all the ships, each country starts with minus the submarines and minus the production queue. So nothing in production will be added to these fleets. So the raw fleets will fight each other. And I will be running the tests first without any admirals, any doctrines, or any spirits. Then I will add, just to see which fleet is the strongest, then I will add admirals, and then I will remove the admirals and add spirits and doctrines, and then I will remove that, and then I will add admirals and spirits and doctrines and see what happens. So if we can tilt the results in one way or another, after we establish which one is the strongest in the raw shape, so to speak. Yeah, there's a lot of tests coming up, so stay tuned and see if you will enjoy it as much as I did. Alright, so let's start with fight number one. That is Japan versus the US without any admirals. So let's see if we can get them both into the fight. Yeah, and no exercising. It's just the base level that we have here. So let's unpause. Let's see what happens. Here we go. First fight. And it's somewhat of an advantage to the US. Keep track on the ships sunk in the bottom. And if you didn't know it, you can just hover the flags here, then you can see where all the damage is coming from during the fight as well. But yeah, slugging it out quite even. Let's speed it up a little bit, because we're going to do a lot of testing. And there we go. It's almost over. So, screen-wise, very similar fight. Basically, yeah, very even. But then at the end, the US capitals just ran over Japan. So, victory USA. And I did this test like 5 times, and the US wins every time. So they are the usual winners. Sometimes they win by more, a little bit less, but they always win. Before moving on to the next part, I just want to say that most of you watching this are yet not subscribers. So if you would hit that that subscribe button, you would receive a new guide from me and Boppus every Monday. If you want to have even more guides, you can become a patron, and then you will get access to a full archive of 32 Patreon exclusive guides and an additional one every second week on top of that. And our endless love and Discord and everything else, of course. So check it out, it's in the description below. Let's continue. Alright, so let's go with fight number 2, the UK versus the US. And here we go. Let's slow it down a little bit. So UK slight advantage. We see that, yeah, the destroyers are dropping quicker from the US compared to the UK. Oh, a heavy cruiser. See if we can speed it up a little bit. yeah, the UK is shredding the US Navy. So now all the screens are gone, the screen efficiency is down. The back line is starting to get hurt properly. Yeah, this is a bloodbath. 100 destroyers gone. The cruisers are dropping the first battleship. Yeah, quite clear UK victory over the US. And they are fleeing the remaining ships. But as you can see, the UKs were not really challenged. They lost a bit, but kept all the capitals pretty much. Yeah, clear UK victory. All right, so now to fight number 3, which is the UK versus Japan. And I mean, Japan lost against the US and the US lost against the UK, so I would expect Japan to lose against the UK, but let's see. So here we go. Oh, where's the fight? There we go. So at first glance, it looks like, yeah, a crush from the UK. Yeah, you can see the UK is shredding through the screens. They're dealing some blows back, but this is gonna be a slaughter. Just like the UK against the US. And now capitals are dropping. Yeah. Even clear victory than compared to the UK versus US. So, yeah. Clear decisive victory for the UK over Japan. Alright, so after the first round of fights we established that the UK starting fleet is the strongest fleet in its raw shape, so to speak, without any modifiers around it. The US fleet is the second strongest one, and the Japanese one is the third in the hierarchy, or on top of the hill. So what I will be doing now is that we will add different admirals to the Japanese fleet and the US fleet and the UK fleet and see if we can change these results somehow. And I'm not going to do the obvious thing, just take the best one versus the worst one. But I will show you now what I plan to do. So let's start with the US. And then let's take Nimitz, one of the most popular admirals in the game. And of course, a very strong one. Let's not add any traits on top of what they already start with, just to make it easy. So Nimitz on the US side, and then we will throw him into battle. This one will tick up as they go there. Yeah, great. And then we'll go to Japan. And on the Japanese side, we will add Yamamoto on the Japanese side and see if that can change the results somehow. So last time the US won. Let's see what happens this time. And here we go. Quite even. The US is dropping more screens than Japan. But the battleship has sunk. Another capital ship, some heavy cruisers. The US seems to have an upper hand, but they're trading quite heavy. Yeah, no, still US victory, but this time it cost them quite a lot. So most of the battleships survived, one battleship got sunk. Yeah, you can see the results. But very even, more even than last time if I recall, but still a US victory. Alright, so let's go on to fight number 5, and this time around we will try to change the Japanese admiral, and we will also add some traits to the admirals. So we're still on Nimitz for the US, but let's buff him up a little bit. So let's give him Lancer, Destroyer Leader, and Cruiser Captain. And then, yeah, he will have to go back there for some organization. Then let's go to Japan. Now, instead of Yamamoto, we will give Japan Osawa, I think you pronounce it. I'm slaughtering Japanese here. But let's give him Concealment Expert, and this is one of my favorite ones. Minus visibility. Let's give him destroyer leader, maybe? Yeah. And let's give him lancer. Yeah, let's try that. I think that plays to Japan's advantage. Do it like that. Then wait a little bit so the US can get their organization up. Japan is out. Let's go to the US and see if they are ready. They are building up the organization. And let's go. Let's watch it from the Japanese side. Always engage. And there we go. This will be very interesting. So, last time the US won, but they took some heavy damage doing so. Let's see what happens this time around. So, as we can see, it's trending more positively this time for Japan. The destroyers are getting slaughtered from the US. Yeah, this is turning to Japan's advantage. And then let's see what is happening. Before the battle is over, we can see that Japan will win this one. All the battleships are being sunk on the US side. And just by changing the admiral and adding some traits, all of a sudden Japan is crushing it basically. So what is happening if we look at the stats? We can see that by the bottom here on the screen, we see that damage dealt by individual ship types. We see that the destroyers on the Japanese side are doing most of the work. So 29% is coming from the destroyers, 26% from battleships, 20 from heavy cruisers, 11 by battle cruisers, and 10 by light cruisers. And damage type, it's light guns, heavy the torpedoes is up on 33%, 32% now from Japan. And the US, battleships done most of the damage from the US side, while it's the destroyers done most of the damage from the Japanese side. So that is very interesting. But yeah, so Japanese victory by changing the admirals and the traits, but the fleet was the same in all other ways. The admiral was the same on the US side, but then a better admiral, same level, but with different traits, and that changed it for the Japanese favor. Very interesting. All right, so let's move on to fight number 6, and that is the UK versus the US once again, but now we add some admirals to that fight as well. So in the UK ring corner, we will add what I think is their best admiral, Andrew Cunningham. Let's not take any traits right now. And then let's go over to the US. And on the US side, let's not add Nimitz this time because he got beaten by the Japanese, so he's probably not the best one to add. Let's take Halsey instead, William Halsey, and put him in the fight. And then let's unpause and see what happens. So last time the UK crushed the US. Let's see what happens this time around. Let's run it rather quick. Seems like the UK is crushing the US once again. Yeah, the screens are just burning through. Yeah, there we go. Still quite decisive UK victory with these admirals added. So let's go on to fight number 7. So let's swap out the UK admiral from Cunningham to Somerville, which some might think is a better admiral. Depending on what you do, there's no right or wrong here. But let's take that level 5 admiral from the UK side and let's see what happens instead. So on the US side, let's keep Halsey, which I think is the best admiral that the US have right now, based on what we are trying to test. And let's unpause and see what happens. And still we haven't added any traits. This looks favor the UK yet again. But let's see what happens. Yeah, no. See? Something is happening. It's more even this time around. yeah, they're slugging it out, but yeah, looks like we're gonna slow it down. Yeah, the battleships are surviving the fight this time around, and all the battleships and battlecruisers are getting sunk or have escaped on the UK side. So it's just the carriers left and some other screens, and they are fleeing. So by adding Halsey to the US side, I have keeping Halsey but changing Cunningham to Somerville on the UK side, they actually lost this battle. And just so you know, this is not a coin toss. I've been running all these tests several times to confirm them. And yeah, this one was won every time by the US when I did it like this. So very interesting. So I won't be doing the UK against Japan with the added admirals, but I think that the point has been proven by just swapping from the top tier admirals a little bit with or without traits. You can change the results quite quick. So let's move on to the next phase of testing. All right, so in my third round of testing, I will be removing the admirals again, but instead taking doctrines and spirits in one way or another. So we will have one fight we will do doing this, which I have ran several times, but let's take one as an example. So we have the UK side, and the UK side is going for a base strike doctrine. So the base strike, all in, illustrating a carrier focus and a light cruiser focus. And on top of that, we want to be sure that our planes actually fly. So we've taken the bad weather penalty minus 40% to allow our fighters and navs actually making sorties into the fight. On the US side, however, we will be doing the classical UK thing. We will be going for a fleet in being doctrine instead. So classical fleet in being, and then add night fighting, which gives better fighting in night, but also lower visibility. So let's see what happens during this fight. Let's throw both sides into it. And remember, no admirals this time around, so now we're back to the base, but with the doctrines on top of that. So this is going to be really interesting as well. There we go. So at first glance, the UK have a slight favor, but let's see what happens when we unpause this fight. Yeah, the US is taking heavy beating. Looks like the UK have the upper hand, but then some heavy cruisers are dropping. But this is interesting. So the UK is starting to lose all of a sudden. The back line is getting sunk. And let's pause here just to see what's happening. So we can see that the back line is getting slaughtered on the UK side. The carriers are still there, trying to do some damage. The screens had the upper hand against the US, but now they caught up on the other side. And this is basically the effect we see from the fleet in being doctrine really slugging it out. So the battleships are getting so much stronger based on this. While the UK side, they don't have that many planes and not that many carriers, and they're even just a little bit overstacked on the carrier side. But yeah, the result is a quite decisive, the US victory based on the starting fleets. Yeah, they're sinking the rest of it. So results, all the screens are basically gone for the US, but pretty much everything got sunk from the UK side in this fight. So my very last test for this guide, and that will be the best navy against the worst one, so the UK against Japan. The UK still on the base strike with Somerville as the admiral. We've given him some traits, and then also the bad weather. And on the Japanese side, we'll go for a low visibility with Osawa, concealment expert, destroyer leader, and cruiser captain. And then knight fighting on top of that, and fleeting being doctrine. So let's see who will get this one. And let's go for the UK. There we go. So let's see what happens. So right away we see that they are trading quite evenly. It looks like the Japanese are sinking a bit more destroyers than the UK, but it's still progressing. Yeah, it's very tugging back and forth, very even, very undecisive right now. So the backline is starting to get sunk on the UK side, but still not really clear who's gonna take it. Oh, this is a very exciting one. I'm not sure where I would bet my money right now. Let's have a quick look before we unpause. So almost no screens left on Japanese side. The backline is quite heavily hurt. On the UK side, they're starting to flee the battleships. Yeah, I think I would give this to Japan. Let's see, the battleships are still out there fighting. Ah, they're fleeing. Oh, just some light cruisers left and 2 battleships. Oh, let's see what's... Oh, yeah. Comeback. Comeback is real. The Japanese, they're taking it. Oh, just... I think. Yes. Yes, okay. That was a very, very, very close call. Super interesting. So, we saw that the Japanese... Yeah, the Japanese won it just very tight. And I ran this test a few different times, and Japan won most of them. The UK won one of my tests, and Japan won the other 4 tests I ran. So it can swing either way, but this just pushes Japan up to win most of the times compared to the UK. So interesting stuff. All right, so what are the conclusions and what have we learned in this extensive testing? And well, first off, I want to say that I've done, like most of the testing that I've done today, I have not showed you guys. I've done several hours of testing before doing this guide. So I've shown you the highlights that I thought was relevant, but every fight I ran over and over again to get the results. And they were all very conclusive, apart from the last one between the UK and Japan, which most of the times Japan won, but UK also won a few of them. So that was very, very tight. But as some kind of conclusion, on the base fleets that we see on the screen, the UK one was clearly the strongest one, followed by the US, and lastly Japan. US and Japan was more even, but the UK was clear number 1 in this like default mode. When we started to add admirals to it, like all sides have strong admirals, so they could we could keep the hierarchy as it was, but if one side picked the wrong admiral, the other side would win, basically. So picking the right admiral would give you the upper hand, but if everyone picked the best ones, it would still have the same hierarchy like we see here. However, when we remove the admirals and then look at the doctrines, then it became more decisive in the battleship side of things. I never ran testing on the raiding doctrine, but the battleship doctrine would win in most fights. It wasn't good enough for Japan to win over the UK, but you could swap it around, so Japan could win over the US, and the US could win over the UK by having the right doctrine set up. And then when we added it all together and added both Doctrine, Spirits, and Admiral, then we could even make Japan win over the UK. And in all these testings, like you saw when I ran through it, I kept myself in the top tier of the Admirals. So there were like an easy mistake by picking one or the other depending on your setup. So it wasn't like a level 1 against a level 5 or something like that, but we kept it on the higher tier when running these tests. So with that said, I think it's so open-ended how this game or how the naval fighting could end with the starting fleets. But because just consider that we only played with Doctrines, Admirals, and a few different traits and spirits. But I mean, if you start refitting your navy, the starting navy, let's add air war game on top of the sea zones with navs and with like fighter planes or heavy fighters, tactical bombers. Let's add tech on top of that if one side have more or better tech than the other side. And I mean, there are so many different like variables that you could mix into this, and so I mean, it's anyone's game. So the Japanese Navy, starting Navy, could easily beat the UK Navy any day of the week if they just have like a few different what built it a little bit differently with just everything around it. And we haven't even looked at exercising the fleets, because that also gives you an edge. And one thing I have to also add on top of that is that if anyone runs out of fuel mid-fighting, they will automatically lose right away. It happened quite many times when I did the testing for the UK, because they usually have a bigger issue with fuel compared to the US and Japan. So they might be smart to build some fuel silos playing in the UK in general and have a big stockpile, so you don't run out of fuel mid-fight, because the fights can drag out for weeks sometimes, and then your full stockpile can get rid of full stockpile mid-fight. Yeah, that was a long conclusion, but I think there are a lot of things to unwrap in this testing. And let me know, guys, what you think about the format. It was quite long, there was a lot of testing, but I really enjoyed doing it. And I think it showed that it's not so binary that you might think, but just adding some layers of complexity and configuration on your navy, and all of a sudden you can win quite easily over a much stronger fleet than your own fleet. See you next week, guys.